Welcome back to our second session. So this will be Kishore will talking about the flow-based approach for form validation in ReactJs. So over to you, Kishore.
Yeah, uh, I think it's already afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kishore, and I'm a software engineer at OYO. Today, I would like to talk about a different approach to JSON validation, a different way of creating forms using React.js. I take React.js as the candidate, so let's get started. So, to be precise, rather than saying software engineer at OYO, I can say that I'm a web development engineer. And every time I go to my work, basically, I do this lot of stuff on forms, like uh, creating forms, validating that stuff, and this kind of stuff basically most of the time. And I can literally say you that I eat forms, I drink forms when it comes to my work basically. And creating forms is not a rocket science, definitely. It's pretty easy where you add up all your UI elements one after the other, an input field, password field, drop down and everything stuff. But the problem is, even though creating forms is easy, doing it the right way is definitely hard. Because whenever we try to create a form, it's not about just UI. We also need to make sure of validations, where whenever we enter some value wrong, we need to guide the user in a proper direction, saying that so and so value was entered wrong, and we need to give him a proper user experience. So having this UI and validations blend properly so that we have a great user experience is something which is very very hard to achieve basically. And that is where I say that creating forms the right way is hard. And every time I get to create this new form, I have to start from the scratch, like developing the UI, adding validations, and making sure that user experience of doing all this stuff together is pretty straightforward. So just to make sure that every time I create a form, all right. So for this UI and validations, we've got tons of libraries. Like for focusing only on UI, we've got Forms React, Redux Forms, Formic, React Forms, and a lot of libraries which focus solely on UI part of the problem. And when it comes to validations, we've got a lot of schemas like JSON schema, Joy library. Yep. I mean, there are a lot of things that focus on validation part of this thing. So even though these are like two problems, creating a form in which we focus on UI and validations, they both are tied together very much tightly. So I have created this library called FlowJV, which bundles them both into one single package so that whenever I need to create a form, it's no more like frustrating job, but it's like eating pizza basically. So I'll just demonstrate you directly. So the way FlowJV works is simple. It has its own schema, obviously. The schema that is common to both UI, validations, and data requirements. I mean, it's one unified schema that focuses on all three aspects, and giving that to FlowJV creates a form out of it. Okay, so I'll just show you a small demo. Fine. So here I have created a schema. It's a minimal schema. All right. So from FlowJV is the library I've developed where I create this schema. So basically this is TypeScript, and for creating schema I've got this iFlow schema type to create this schema. So as I've told you, the schema that FlowJV takes in is common for both UI validations and also requirements like data requirements. It's a common packaged schema so that you don't need to leave your schema to define anything anywhere else. Okay, so with that said, this is a minimal flow schema. That means it's a minimal schema that FlowJV can accept, where I say that the type of object I expect out of this UI is going to be of type object, and the list of properties is empty. And when I told this, so basically I bootstrap my UI accordingly. So uh, whenever I make changes, UI gets updated. Okay. So with this, properties is empty. So that's why I do not see any properties here. So this is like minimal schema, that is valid FlowJV schema. So now let's suppose the kind of object I'm expecting once I validate, once I enter input in this form is an object, and list of properties I expect. So to add properties, I'll do is I'll just add a key type name and the type of value I'm expecting. So that is what an object is after all, right? An object is nothing but a key value pairs. And what I'm saying is the type of value I'm expecting is an object. And in the properties, the first property I expect is of key name, and the type of value I'm expecting is string. So going with the same flow, I can keep telling that the rest of the values that I expect out of this registration form are like age, gender, email, password, confirm password. Is the user who is entering the form, is he employed or not? And then years of experience if he is employed. So once I define all these properties, UI automatically get updated with all the relevant fields, which is kind of nice. But if you can see, we've got all these as text fields because it's of type string. But then FlowJV understands internally that it's of key name. The first one is name, second one is age. But for visual appearance, like to make user guide properly, UI schema is also embedded in it. So when I say that, we have something called labels, where we define for each property that the label of the value that we are expecting is of so and so value. Like for example, when it comes to name key, I am expecting the label to be name. By this, it will properly tell the user what kind of value that we are expecting in the first place, which is nice. But then the kind of values that we're expecting for age, are you employed is a boolean basically, where I say yes or no answer. In the same way, when I say for age, it's of type number. So we can define our types by just saying that what type of value it is expecting. And when it comes to gender, it's not a string, but it is one of male or female. So once we define the type of values that we are expecting out of it, UI automatically gets updated with the relevant type of value. So when it comes to string, it's a text field, which is quite common. When it comes to age, it's a type number. And once I enter it, you can see that this is of type number. It only expects type number, right? And in the same way, when it is Boolean, it makes more sense to have a checkbox rather than a text field. So it changed into a a checkbox. So as I've told you, like flow schema is common schema between data requirements as well as UI. It describes how the UI should look like imperatively, basically. But then there are few changes that we want in our UI itself. Like let's suppose even the password is of type string, I do not want to see the value over here. By default, string type expects to be of type string, and because of that, whatever password I enter here is going to be like visible, which is not desired. For that, we have something called UI type. Okay, so for each property, not only we define key, type of value we expecting, and label, we also uh, give something called UI type. So in fact, for gender, let's suppose gender is a drop down, which is fine. But then I want it to be a radio group where I can say two values at the same time. That will be a better user experience rather than having a drop down. So for just doing that, I'm going to define this UI type saying password for both password and confirm password. And for gender type, I expect this UI type to be radio. In the same way for password and confirm password, I expect it to be UI type of password. And once I do this, it gets automatically gets rendered to relevant UI type. And now password is no more visible, and it is protected internally basically. So once that is done, everything is in place. One important thing that we are missing is validations. Now the form is valid, and I have added this button register. Once I click on it, if the data is valid, we're going to get the data entered basically. Now, because we do not have any validations in place, I'll just reload the page. And once I reload, everything got clear. And because we are having all the properties but no validations in place, it's like a valid data basically. So now to make sure that this is validations are in place, I will try to add validations for email, password, and confirm password, where I say password should adhere to some rules, like it should be of minimum of 5 character length, and confirm password should equal password, and email should be a valid email ID. Let's just see how that works through validations. So to add validations for every property, we've got something called validations key, where it defines an array of validations. So if you see email, it takes validations, which is an array where we define the logic for our validation and an error message that needs to be shown in case if that logic fails. So the logic field also takes something called data and ref. I'll talk about ref later. So data is nothing but the data that we are trying to validate, the JSON object that we are trying to collect from this form. So we can add as many validations as possible because validations is just an array. And then for password and confirm password, let's fill this error messages saying okay, if email is not valid, I want to show this message saying email should be a valid email ID. Same for password and confirm password. Now the logic for these things is just a JavaScript function. Logic is just a JavaScript function where I say data.password length is should be greater than 5. Password should equal confirm password, and then email ID should match the proper regex for email ID. And once I save this, validations will be in place. Now, like if you can see, register button got automatically blurred out because the form is no more valid. If I just click on register, it shows that email should be a valid email ID and password should be of minimum character file length. And now this message is nothing but the message we have said across logic saying that email should be valid email ID. We can add as many logic that we want to, like it is required or this and that. Yeah, we can do that basically. Now, with that said, let me talk about ref. Ref is nothing but whenever I try to validate a property, I don't want to access that value all the time because a property under validation. Because whenever I am in the email property, that means there is very high possibility that I'm going to validate email in the first place. That is what ref is. What ref says is property under validation. So when it comes to email, validations in email have this ref, which is nothing but data pointing to this email itself. So in the same way, rather than saying data.password, I can say it as ref. So that anywhere in going down the lane, if we change the key property to something else, or if we change the schema as well, ref is always going to point the same property under validation. So it's just a better way of writing code. So I'll just change this data email and data password as ref. This is just another approach of doing the same, but functionally both are same. Whether you access it as data.password or ref, in here data.email or ref, it's just a trade-off which we can have. And now with this done, our form is ready. Like we can start validating this stuff, like saying username to be like programmer, let's suppose, and then age is like 21, name, and then email ID like something at the rate something.com, which is valid email ID. And if once I enter password, confirm password is going to throw an error saying that confirm password no longer matches this password. Now let's suppose I enter password, and if I enter confirm password, the moment I change password to be invalid, confirm password is also going to throw this error. Now with this, once I register, I get all the information that was entered in the form along with validations and proper user experience. Now there is one last piece that is missing here. That is, years of experience needs to be collected only if user is employed. To do that, we have something called flow logic, which is very straightforward. Like we just define an if condition below is employed, saying that the type of property is kind of if, and the condition is if if user is employed, only then show this field in the true column. Otherwise, maybe we can add something like false, which is properly right way. Now with this defined, we can say that if user is employed, only then that field is taken, otherwise it's just hidden. Okay, So this is like conditional properties which FlowJV also supports. And with this, the form is ready, where I can start entering all this information and stuff. And for this meetup, actually, I have created another binding. So we've got this form, right? So if you can see, take a look into the flow schema. This is not very complicated. It's just like a programming language, the programs that we write, where we enter instructions top down, one after the other, like list of statements, right? Program is just a bunch of statements executed one after the other. So when it comes to flow schema, it also takes the same approach where we've got properties and we have the property name and then age and then gender and then email. So it's like list of properties that we define one after the other. And also we've got conditional saying if the condition is true then this, otherwise not. So mastering this flow schema is no harder than any programming language basically. Now with this flow schema defined, uh, what I want to show you is chatbot. Just take an example of a chatbot where a bot is going to ask us questions and we give an answers. This is a perfect candidate, right? Because we have defined a schema in top-down approach, one after the other. This is the perfect candidate for applications like chatbot, where questions are going to be asked one after the other, and you can answer it, and we can have this validation stuff. So I have created this chatbot binding for this flow schema, and that is nothing but this. Okay. Now, when it comes to chatbot, showing the label as name, age doesn't make sense, right? So for that, we need to have in a questionnaire format, like what is your name, what is your age, and then gender. So labels should be not same as forms. So I'll just quickly change that. And also, there are a couple of validations that need to be added for chatbot. Like let's suppose if it comes to a form, we have this drop down like gender where it says whether it is male or female, but when it comes to a chatbot you cannot infer the value from the question. When it comes to a form, you will have this select drop down where you can take one of the two values. So we need to add proper validations accordingly for chatbot schema, and accordingly that gets reflected. So once I have done this, I'll just reload this chatbot once again. So it's simple. For every property, now we have a different level. So what's your name? All right, I'll just finish up this bot saying, okay, my name is like Kishore. All right, are you employed? Okay, I'll say no because I'm not employed. So I just move this employed field to the top. And because I said no, it is not asking for years of experience. Only if it is employed, it's going to ask, which is fine. And how old are you? I'll just 23. And male. What's your gender? All right. I'll say okay, fine. Something else. And now it throws me an error saying, okay, gender should be of male or female. All right, I'm a male or female. Well, that doesn't work. So it should be one of the male or female. Okay, I'll just enter it as male, and then email ID. If I enter something, enter at something.com, it will work. Sure, because it's a valid email ID. And the password. Okay, I'll just say hey. Password as hey, and it throws me an error saying password should be minimum of 5 character length. All right, so I'll say okay hey, which is like valid password. Now please confirm the password you've entered. All right, if I enter something like other than that, like some random, please enter correct password you entered prior. These error messages are nothing but that we have defined here. Confirm password. Now that I've entered my confirm password, which matches the password previously entered, now I get the same data as form. So we got this form, which is like we can whatever schema we define for chatbot is also valid for form as well. But now the thing is, you're going to get these questions: what's your name? Are you employed? If yes, how many years of experience do you have? How old are you? You know, gender and everything stuff. Like everything remains same. The only thing is labels are going to change. Of course, we do not want forms to be in this way, so we need to add different labels. So this is all about FlowJV, which is under development, active development. And then, so FlowJV is basically divided into different packages. Like FlowJV is the core validation uh, library, where whatever schema you've been looking into takes this data requirements or as well as validations. It also provides us some utilities with which we can create a lot of bindings. Like I have created this form and chat binding. Chat binding is not yet deployed in production. Like it's not pushed into the code base yet. Only for this talk, I wanted to show you what the possibilities of FlowJV is, just to show that I have created that demo. But soon it will be getting added into this FlowJV React package, and these are like UI bindings. So if you can see, the form you're seeing here has got this light and dark theme, right? And also whatever validations you enter, accordingly it's getting changed, the colors and stuff. And also everything got laid out based on the schema we've entered. And for doing this, there is this function that FlowJV provides with which you can customize your UI with how your UI element should look like based on your own requirements of your company or anything. So by default, FlowJV provides two such packages, where custom and material, where material is nothing but material UI. If you can see the chatbot, this is developed using material UI. This is like material UI, and this is like custom UI, which is gets shipped along with FlowJV as well. And
There
yeah,
are a couple of questions, Kishore. So, would you like to answer those?
yeah, sure, Patro.
Can you go to the question tab, please?
Perfect. Can you ask the question? Explain question mark dot syntax. Okay, so question mark dot is nothing but it's a JavaScript new way of writing this thing. So let's suppose I've got this object. So okay, I'll just create new file. So let's suppose I've got this object, const obj is equal to some object. Now let's suppose if I want to access some value like obj dot something like a key 1 dot key 2, let's suppose, it's going to throw me an error. And the reason is obj dot key 1, there is no such field as key 1 that exists. So if I try to access key 1, well, this part works fine. But when I try to go nested within that particular field, it's going to fail. Like key 1, and if I have this key 2, then it works. So this is a chain syntax, which is like a new feature in ES6, where you can, not ES6, like latest JavaScript feature, where you have optional chaining, where you say that if key 1 is undefined, well, return me undefined the entire expression. Otherwise, if it is undefined, just return undefined. Otherwise, you can go forward within the path basically. It's a new JavaScript thing. It's nothing to do with FlowJV in particular. Okay, just take a look into this. This optional chaining part in JavaScript is the best thing that has happened in the recent additions to JavaScript language by this thing. And the other thing, are you using CDN third-party libraries? How far the library applicable to most of the upcoming frameworks, stable or unstable, like Swell, Next.js, etc. So FlowJV for now, well, the binding that FlowJV provides at this moment is React, because that is what I'm good at. So Next.js. So if you can see this entire application, like this whole thing, is written in Next.js. Okay, for this demo thing was written in Next.js. So you can actually look into the documentation where I clearly give you this walkthrough of how to install this package, how to use it properly. Whether it is stable or unstable, so let me tell you this frankly. So this is under very active development. I have even created a YouTube tutorial series for this FlowJV, like how things work basically. But everything got changed. We are not yet into 1.0 version. So I just wanted to show you how FlowJV. I mean, there are a lot of stuff that is still missing in FlowJV, like support for arrays and date validations and also from performance perspective. There is a plan. So if you can see, whenever I change this password, everything is getting re-rendered, right? Like if I enter this password, confirm password is depending on this password. Current implementation of FlowJV, what it does is, whenever I change a value, everything gets re-rendered, which is not ideal way. So what I am trying to do is, I want to get these queues where confirm password depends on only password. So whenever I change password, only confirm password is going to re-render along with password. So this type of performance is still is under active development. So if you can see, there's already a branch created for the same feature slash performance, where we are trying to add that kind of performance incremental thing. And another thing is, yeah, yeah, I'm not using any kind of CDN. It's a React package. And if you can see the bundle phobia, I want to make sure that whatever I've been developing so far, it's very least in terms of bundling. So if you take into FlowJV, it's just 21.1 KB when minified. And then have from React, it's just 30 KB minified, and then custom, let's suppose whatever we've been using for custom, this thing is just 10 KB. So overall in 50 KB you're going to get all this functionality with uh, not much of stuff added upon. So another thing is, FlowJV is completely independent. It doesn't use any library except Lodash, and I want to remove this Lodash library as well from the bundle. But before 1.0, because there are a couple of things that I'm still figuring out, because this is a completely new way of doing things, right? In terms of creating this forms and stuff from a given list of validations, I'm still figuring out some things. And if you want to contribute to this, I would love to have your contributions as well. Uh, yeah, so there are no dependencies for JV, and this UI type and validation regular expressions. So this is like just the JavaScript stuff that you see here. Validations. This is just valid JavaScript. There are few things that are added into the schema just to make sure that uh, along with requirements, UI related stuff is also added into the schema itself. It's basically a trade-off.
Yeah, so Kishore, sorry to interrupt. So it's a time check. Uh, so I think you're done with whatever you wanted to present.
Yeah, I'm pretty much done. So if you guys want to have further look into it, just take a look into this GitHub repo. Uh, and thank you so much.
Yeah, so Kishore, I hope you'll be around for some more time. So if any questions to Kishore, you can directly shoot out to him, and he will love to answer those. Right?
Perfect. Yeah, thanks.
Cool.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So we'll have our interesting session. The next one, code snippet challenge. I know you all guys love it. So it was a very well received the first code snippet challenge which we have done last month. So this is our second one, and it will be again managed by curated by Sunny. So we'll be meeting in that session. So stay tuned, guys. I'll be starting that session in a couple of minutes. Thank you all. So see you on our code snippet challenge in a couple of minutes.